Welcome to The Grow Show, powered by Steel. On The Grow Show, we share ideas, tips, tactics, and insights to help you grow your landscaping business based on our team's 40 years of experience running a landscaping company and working with other owners and their teams to do the same. New episodes are released weekly on Wednesdays. Without further ado, here's your host, Marty Grunder.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever the case may be. This is Marty Grunder from Grunder Landscaping Company and the Grow Group with another exciting edition of The Grow Show, powered by Steel. And those of you that are watching us on YouTube, you've probably figured out by now, I am not by myself this week on The Grow Show. We have someone who has been a tremendous mentor to both myself and Seth Flum, our company president. And he's become such a mentor. He's a great friend, used to be a neighbor, and just one of those people that comes into your life that makes an enormous impression. And Mark will probably be blushing here, but this is Mark Thompson with us today. Mark, welcome to The Grow Show.
Thanks, Marty. Glad to be here.
Well, we're always excited to have guests like you on The Grow Show, and I'm excited to have you here because I'm pretty sure our closest followers, once they're done listening to you, they're going to say, that's where he got that from. He got those ideas from Mark. So, Mark, give us a little bit of background on who Mark Thompson is, where you're from, what you're doing now. How did you come to where you are today? I think people will really enjoy getting to know you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, Marty, I started my career as an engineer, and I like to say I'm an engineer gone bad. So
an engineer gone bad. I love it.
Started working for an engineering consulting firm and realized that pretty quickly it's all about business. We're in business, and all the big differences that were going to be made were on the business side. There were certainly engineering that interested me, but I think my first love was business, and I just didn't know it at the time.
Degree in civil engineering.
Civil and structural.
From the University of Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And then an MBA from
Miami
University.
Yeah, just slow learner.
I
had to keep studying.
Right.
So grew up in that consulting firm, and around we were growing. And the firm was a bunch of engineers and architects, a bunch of technical people, and we really didn't know a lot about how to run a business.
Okay.
And I missed a meeting and came back the next day and found out I was president. And kept waiting for others to miss meetings.
Right.
No one would. We had perfect attendance.
Right. He's kidding, by the way, folks.
But really, we were at a point. I had been growing a satellite office in a different market. I had gone down to Cincinnati from Dayton and launched that market and growing a satellite office, getting a lot of bumps and bruises, trying to sell to Procter & Gamble and GE and Ford and General Mills and so forth. And decided we needed to mature the firm. We needed to grow up a little bit as a business.
Right.
I had just finished my MBA, and that's kind of how I ended up becoming president. I was 40 at the time, ran that firm for 14 years as president, CEO. The last handful of years, I was also chair of the board.
Right.
Over that time, became the largest shareholder, and then just honestly got fatigued.
Yeah. Right. Which happens.
It happens. So youngest was going off to college. We had kind of met a lot of life's big expenses, and I was kind of out of gas.
Mm-hmm.
And decided to go be a business advisor, which is where you and I reconnected.
Right.
And did that for about 5 years. I kind of viewed myself as a parish priest hanging out with my fellow sinners. It was not a lot of preaching. It was a lot of sitting like you and I are right now, shoulder to shoulder, figuring it out. And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, as a business coach like that, you've got people that already understand the basics of business. They were struggling with the same things that you used to struggle with, and were probably still struggling with to some degree.
Still struggling, sure.
Right. And what I've always found fascinating about you, Mark, is that civil engineering is a very technical thing. In fact, my dad was a civil engineer. My dad did a lot of work with your firm, which is just of all the ironies.
Yeah.
He knew all the founders of your firm. It's just a really cool story. but you have you have a funny side to you. When I listen to you lay out business plans and point out things to Seth and I that we should be thinking about, I see the engineer in you.
Sure.
But you've also helped us with personnel issues and the psychology of leading people and managing. And I just can't say enough about the skill set that you have, because I think it's pretty unique to be a civil engineer and also have a ton of business sense. I think that I'm not saying a civil engineer can't be a business owner, but there's a lot of soft side to running a business that I think some engineers, I know my father couldn't have run a business. He had too big of a temper. There was just no way.
Sure.
And he didn't analyze people or say, I wonder if I'm the reason they're not doing what I want them to do. And you're a very thoughtful person.
Well, I appreciate that.
Speaking of being a thoughtful person, one of the things that we learned a lot from you is this topic of professional management.
Mm-hmm.
You hear it all the time in the business world. I heard it when I was a student at the University of Dayton. And the professor would talk professional management. And of course, you'd say, oh, yeah, I know what that means. I understand that. I didn't know what it meant or understood it. I do now.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot about professional management from you. So what is it? And help us understand what professional management is.
Marty, the best way I can kind of relate that is thinking of management as an actual profession. And so most of us in business are really good at something, and we see a different way. So in effect, we're a technician, a landscaper, an engineer.
Right.
And we're really good at landscaping and engineering. We decide, you know what, we have a special way or a different way, or my path is taking me to launch into a business. And for the early journey, being good at whatever you're good at is really important until you get to about 10 employees.
And try to scale it.
And you're at a whatever number of employees, somewhere around 8 to a dozen.
Yep.
And you're no longer landscaping. Your whole job is management. And it's hopefully becoming more professional management. And now the limits to really achieving your future desired state or your dreams or your vision are not how good of a landscaper you are, but can I manage and grow and lead this business?
And we're not just talking managing people.
Not at all.
We're talking managing the whole entity.
Yep.
And as you say this, Mark Thompson's with us here today on the Grow Show, powered by Steel. Actually came into the studios. As you say this, I'm reminded of a concept that we teach in the Grow Group. And the concept is what gets most landscapers to $1 million a year in sales is saying yes.
Mm-hmm.
But what gets them beyond $1 million and on to 2 to 50 to 100, wherever you're going, is saying no. And that's what I'm taking from what you're saying, in that professional management, going beyond $1 million, the $1 million landscaper knows all their clients' names. They know their team's names. They've got a handle on things. Something's broken. There's an issue. You can see it. Your span of control is there. But to get beyond that $1 million, you got to be able to say no. And to be able to say no in a business effectively, there's got to be the framework, the professional management in place.
That's right.
To allow the entity to go on and people to know what they're supposed to do without you pulling every lever like you were at $1 million.
Yep. Very true. Very true. I would add to what you're saying. Saying no is incredibly important. So if we look from a market perspective, to defend a position in a market space, we have to be truly excellent, right?
Yep.
And it's hard to be truly excellent at a whole bunch of things.
Right. Well said.
You and I have talked about this, Marty. We can conceive way more than we can do with excellence.
Right.
Just because I can think it doesn't mean I can execute it.
Right.
I got to be able to think it to execute it, but it doesn't go both ways. And so to be really excellent, you have to focus. You have to decide what slice of the market are we going to defend
Right.
and be the best at?
Right. What are we going to focus on?
And with that focus, then you can't focus if your answer is always yes, because you're going to be asked to do a lot of things that are not in that focus area, and it will dilute your resources, dilute your attention, and will slow the learning of the organization because you're trying to learn all these things at once. And so managing people, getting it down, focusing.
Right.
Also in the market space, we have to focus. And it's all about excellence. When you're truly excellent at a space, then it's much easier to sell, right?
Right, exactly.
So selling's tough if you don't have a compelling value proposition.
Right.
Hard to
What's a value proposition?
So a value proposition is, what does the customer value and they're willing to pay for?
Right.
So you and I never part with our dollars,
right,
unless we believe the service or the product that we're going to get in exchange is worth more,
right, worth
than
more.
what we're paying.
Yeah, I'm going to get value.
And so as the customer, I'm defining my concept of value. And generally to be excellent, to stand out and be able to communicate that succinctly, which is what you have to do in marketing and selling. You have to be really good at it. You have to be focused, and you have to translate it to your customer in their terms, their terms of value.
As I listen to you, Mark, I'm reminded of how much this stuff is counterintuitive. Like, if you taught a course, a business entrepreneurship course, an introductory course, say we go down to the University of Dayton, down the road, and you were teaching one of those, I don't think you'd want new students to realize the way you get ahead in business is to say no, that you just tell everybody no. No, we can't do that. No, we don't do that. I mean, that's not saying no to opportunities. It's the span of control that becomes the issue.
It is.
And so don't misunderstand us here, folks, listening to us on the Grow Show powered by Steel. We're not saying, Mark, to say no to a customer. But I always tell people there's a Chipotle across the street from us here. And if you go in there and say, hey, I'd like a burger and fries, they're going to look at you and be like, well, Five Guys is across the parking lot, which it is. But they also might want you to go in for a mental evaluation to be like, how can you not see? We don't do burger and fries here.
Right.
Henry Ford once said you can have any color car you want as long as it's black. So professional management then, to me, to elaborate on what you're saying, is also about understanding what we do well, what we don't do well, what kind of people would work out well here, what wouldn't, putting some framework into all the angles of the business. Is that a fair?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is professional management different at a $1.5 million a year landscaping company than at a $400 million a year landscaping company?
It's more segmented. You can certainly show complexity, but fundamentally, no.
Is there a reason that a $1.5 million a year landscaping company should not be looking at professional management?
No. At that stage, you're not going to scale,
right?
Unless you can delegate, unless you can segment and position the business. And yeah, you'll need professional management to go forward.
Let's say
now, if you don't want to scale,
right, exactly, which could be fair.
If you're at $1.5 million, this is working for you,
and you're happy.
You don't want to scale it, then probably not. But if you're wanting to scale, then yeah.
How do you get started with professional management? The listeners that we have, somebody's on the edge of their seat right now. We hope that you and I are so stimulating. How do they get started with it? What do they do?
I think it's shoot, Marty. I would think about your organization and learning the fundamentals. If I were a landscaper, that's a great place to start. And it is about learning. It is about, and I'll say this, we learn when we're ready to learn.
I've heard you say that before.
And so if you're wanting to learn about professional management, I would first look for a mentor.
Okay.
I think we learn most effectively when the student is ready, and generally one-to-one, generally shoulder to shoulder versus nose to nose. And when I say shoulder to shoulder, we're both looking at a problem and working on it. But if you're doing that with a skilled mentor, the mentor will introduce perspectives and then begin teaching along the way.
Right.
Certainly, there's more traditional approaches or programs, but the longer I live, the more I realize that one-on-one is where most of the lights come on.
As I'm listening to you, I'm kind of like, I'm thinking back to the journey that we went on with you when you started helping us. I remember one of the first philosophies you injected into us was, how can we be the highest functioning $5 million a year landscaping company? And the premise that you were teaching us at the time was that you've got to get the 5 million that you're doing. You got to be doing that the best possible way you can, and then go from there, right? That's scaling. It's figuring out what we're doing now as best we can, and then make that easier to scale.
Yeah. And at that time, Marty, you guys had grown into 5 million.
Right.
And you had grown into, we can keep 5 million up there and deliver it, but we're not highly functioning yet. Right. So the next stage of professional management was to become high functioning. Right. Then at that platform, you're ready to go for the next 5, right? Or the next 2, whatever it is. So a lot of times it's never a straight line, as you know this. But when we ramp up, we have to grow into our own shoes. And that's what you all were doing at that 5 million stage. You were between 4 and 5 million.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And you probably remember this, but one of our sessions, you gave me homework. I think you know where I'm going.
Me?
Yeah, you gave me homework. And you said, when you come back, next time we meet, you have to tell me what a $25 million a year Grunder Landscaping Company looks like.
Right.
And I remember when you said that, this is amazing.
You weren't happy.
No, I'm like, I can't do that. This guy's nuts. And I said to you, I don't think I can do that. Yeah. And I like you, and your comment was, well, you're going to have to, I'm never talking to you again. You've got to come back with a way that you could do it. You got to come back and tell me how you think you could do it. Yeah. And we came back with a way that we thought we could do it, which, again, I'm not telling you I believed in it, but it started to get the brain turning to see where we could go. And that's what you said that was the point in the exercise, was to expand your thinking. You got to break through from where you are down there.
So what we were trying to do then, Marty, is at 5 million, your likely next vision was around 7 million.
Right.
And the natural way to get from 5 to 7 is what? Work harder.
Work harder. Just work harder. Sell more.
We're just going to put our heads
stay here
down.
later.
We're going to stay later. We're going to just wring a little bit more out of each of us. But there's a point where there's no more left to wring out.
That's right.
And you've hit diminishing returns. Right. So the idea was not to look at 7, but to look at 25, which sounded crazy.
It did.
And at 5 million, it is a bit crazy.
Right.
But what it forced was, gosh, I have to break this apart. Wait a minute. I have to quit looking at the $5 million firm. I have to look at that $25 million firm. Well, I don't even know how to look at that.
Right.
And so the first thoughts are, well, I could build it with $5 million firms.
Right.
And there the journey starts. So you started painting a picture of 25 million.
Exactly.
And working backwards.
Right.
And that is, if 25 million is the vision, the desired future state, and today is our current reality of 5, that working backwards is the beginning of your strategic plan.
Right.
And all I was trying to do is get you to, lay the $5 million firm down for a minute and rebuild in your mind a $25 million firm. And then let's look at that gap. And now it's game on.
Right, exactly.
It's game on. How do we close that gap? What would have to happen up there? And then it gets down to, now we know with intention how and why we're going from 5 to 7.
Right.
Because we're going from 7 following all the way through with a vision of 25.
Right. It's awesome to listen to you, because what happened was Seth Flum was on the leadership team at that time. He was in a sales position. He wasn't in he was in a management role there per se, but he wasn't at the top of the org chart. And we were working on things. And I think he really started to buy what you were selling. There were things that he would come to me on the side and said, hey, I was thinking about what Mark said. Why don't we work on an org chart that is a company at 25 million? Let's lay it all out and see how many people that is and how many managers that is. Let's look at it from a CapEx perspective. What kinds of trucks and what kind of services? What's our business mix if we were to do that? Can we do that all in Dayton, Ohio? Do we need to go to Cincinnati to get some of it? And what it did by expanding the thinking, instead of just saying we can't do that, because we didn't test anything. It was just me saying, I'm having a hard enough time getting everybody to buy into 5 million.
Right.
When I come and bring other ideas to me, as you know, my team, they were super nice people, lovely, sweet people, trying hard.
Without doubt.
But they didn't want to grow. And maybe they didn't want to grow because they didn't know how to grow. Like I had maxed them out. But when we would talk about doing other things, they would say, well, we can't do that. We're not even doing what we're doing perfect. Let's wait till we get, well, if you wait till everything's perfect, you're never going to get there. Never.
It will never be perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's morph.
So can I talk about that?
Yeah, go ahead. Please do, because you know what we went through.
So I think part of what the team was experiencing is, they didn't want to let you down. They didn't want to let the standards that you were all committed to. They didn't want to come in under those. What maybe they were missing is, in order to keep growing and to keep evolving, you have to have a little reserve in the tank. And so if you're maxed out at 5 million, there's no reserve to learn the next things.
Right.
To do exactly what Seth was doing with my little mind problem that I gave you guys, which is come back with a $25 million.
Right. What's it look like?
What's it look like? And it is not a linear exercise, as you know. So a lot of times on a strategic plan, people would come to me and say, yeah, I just want to bring my whole team there. We'll spend a full day or 2 days, whatever, with you. And out of it, we'll have this beautiful strategic plan. And as you know.
Right. Exactly. It's perfectly color-coded.
Yes, and
we will do exactly that. No one will deviate from it.
And I would say what we talked about earlier, I would say politely, no.
Right.
If you're doing that, I'm not your guy.
Right. But see, I remember when we would talk about that, because the anal guy in me, the OCD, wanted
just get it over with.
Yeah, let's just get it done. But you're a civil engineer, all right?
Yeah.
So when you're engineering a bridge, because my dad was a civil engineer, a roadway, it does have to be precise.
It does.
You don't say, oh, that's enough base. Are you sure? Now, I don't do any compaction testing or anything.
Keep going.
Just, it's fine. So you don't do that. And that's why, like, you almost gave me license to say, look, break a couple eggs to make some omelets here.
Exactly.
Right.
So, great saying. So what also is going on there on the human side is, I believe we literally have to sleep on it. And by that, I mean, if I pull your team together for 2 days of strategic planning with Mark, first
overwhelming.
Of all, horrific.
Right.
I will fatigue them in if we're doing real work.
Right.
In 2.5 hours, I will fatigue them.
Right.
And for the rest of the time,
they're checked out.
They'll comply.
Right.
They'll be polite. They'll comply, but they're maxed out.
Right.
In our sleep, a lot of times, our subconscious is sorting out what we're wrestling with.
I get you.
And so that's where the nonlinear thinking comes to play. And all of a sudden, Seth is thinking about 25 million and the different ways we could structure for 25 million. And then you go sleep on that and you go back to the problem. And so, as you know, we would often separate our sessions by a month.
Exactly.
And I wanted you and your team processing. And that just takes a little bit of time.
So it seems like you're taking a break and nothing's being done, but it's kind of like wine fermenting or a pot roast or whatever. It's soaking it in.
How many times have you heard somebody say, sounds weird, but I was taking a shower this morning.
Yes. Right. And the idea came.
And that is because you're coming out of your sleep, your subconscious, you're waking up, your mind is quiet, and it's bubbling up from your subconscious to your conscious mind. That's really what we're after in a lot of those big shifts. And that's how we used to often say, you got to outwork the work.
Yeah, right.
That's how you outwork the work.
Right. And just to throw this in, folks, today on the Grow Show powered by Steel, we're with Mark Thompson, one of our mentors here and coaches, consultants at Grunder Landscaping Company that we've worked with for a long time. Through the process of doing this, I realized you don't have to have it in some fancy room. You don't have to fly to Florida to do it.
No.
We did some of it here. We did some of it at other places.
Yeah.
We did some of it at a little hotel room. It was more about getting out of the day-to-day, and there was some kind of a physical break that you weren't at work, and it was time to focus on this for a couple hours.
Yeah, you almost need to turn the phones off.
Right.
And just say, we're going to have 3 hours.
Right.
Where this is what we're focused on. And that's about all you can do. You kind of get into the work, you do the work, and you get out of it and prepare for next time. And then you're back at it.
So in the process of doing this, there were several very nice people that left our organization. And that is tough. When they're nice people, you like them, but you realize that some of them realize it on their own. Some of them we had to ask to leave.
Sure.
Those challenges as an entrepreneur, because I see it. I was recently working with a company, and there's a family member in the company that they need to get out of there, and they don't know how to do it. Like, they're like, my mother is going to be she's elderly. She's going to be so disappointed in me. I don't know what to do. What do I do? And we end up coaching. What do you do? How do you take the emotion out of something like that? An employee that's a nice person, a good person. All right. But it's like our mutual friend, Peter Luongo, used to say, I love you, but you just can't work here anymore. Right. You got to get to that point. How do you do that?
So I think it helps at that point if you started that work a lot sooner.
Okay.
And let me explain what I mean. We talked a minute ago about professional management.
Right.
If you gave me a one-word synonym for management in today's workforce, I would choose teaching. When you're managing people, you're basically teaching.
I see.
And once they understand, we don't micromanage. There's not enough.
Right.
Those days are gone. No one will pay for that as a customer anymore. And so if management is teaching, and if we've just defined a desired future state, which is our vision. So back to our example, it's now 25 million from 5 million.
Right.
And our strategic plan is how we're going to move from here to there.
Right. So vision is ideal state, and that plan are the steps it's going to get you there.
The strategies are how we get there.
Right.
And so now your teaching is in the context of that vision and that how.
Yep.
And you're inviting a family member who might be part of the business. And this is a critical word that has helped me the most is I think in terms of inviting. And so I'm inviting so-and-so to grow with us, because we're going to grow from 5 to 25.
Right.
We're going to have to accumulate new skills. We're going to have to learn new things to execute those strategies. We're going to find out that the majority of our first strategies, second strategies, and third strategies are not good strategies.
I got you.
And we'll have to come up with new ones and rebuild that. And so it's a jagged path all the way up the mountain.
With some blood.
with some blood, a few skin knees, right?
Right.
And not everyone is up for that.
Yep.
So as a manager, if you've been inviting and your colleague is saying no,
right.
Now we're at the point where we're going up the mountain.
Right.
And you've been telling me, no, you've done nothing to prepare for this next stage
journey
of the trip.
or whatever. Right.
So I'm going to take you up on your choice.
Right.
So what you're really trying to do is invite the employee enough that you're helping them demonstrate to you and them that they're not willing to go forward. Now you just call it. That's different than going in and firing mom's favorite if you're a family company. I've been inviting,
right,
and they're not interested. And you can lay that out for whoever you're talking with. Now, emotionally, will they process it that way? Unlikely early.
Right.
But over time, I think there's a chance that, and I have had a little bit of success with that, where people say, you're right. I have no passion for 25 million.
Right.
I wanted this smaller thing. In fact, we're too big for me at 5.
Right. And that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We love you.
Right.
Now let's coach you out.
Right.
I can't coach you up.
Right.
So now I'm going to coach you out, and we're going to work on it together. And let's do this as respectfully and gracefully as possible.
And I think that's the key, is that you always want to. I've had to sever several employment relationships. I've had family members I've had to separate employment with, and they all haven't gone smoothly. I'm not going to get into all the details. You know them. But I've always tried to be professional about it. And I can tell you, I sleep well at night.
Yeah.
Like, it's my company. I can't leave. Okay. I'm not going anywhere. So some of that is my vision and where I want to go. And those that want to buy into that vision, they're going to get on the boat and they're going to go. The other ones are going to have to get off the boat.
Yeah.
And a lot of times what I found is people aren't thriving in that environment, and they leave and they thrive somewhere else.
Right.
And it's not always surprising. You find someone that finds a job they love, as Zig Ziglar used to say, and you'll never work a day in your life.
Right.
And I think that's part of it. So great conversation here today with Mark Thompson on The Grow Show. You're pretty familiar with the path that we've had Seth on here and the results. And I think the results speak for themselves. Why do you think the yin and the yang between Seth and myself, why is that working? Because, and I don't mind if you share with our listeners how difficult I am to work with. I don't. I know it's funny. I don't. Why, from your perspective, is it working with Seth and I? I'm a big visionary guy. I got all these ideas. Seth is the implementer with just incredible tenacity. Why is it working for us?
Yeah. So fundamentally, fundamentally, there's 2 things that have to happen in order to have a business. You got to sell something. And then whatever you sold, you got to go do it.
Sell and do. Okay.
Sell and do. Hard to escape that.
Right.
If you don't sell something, you got nothing to do.
Yep.
And it starts with selling something. When we're selling, we're making a promise. When we're doing, we're keeping that promise.
Yep.
To the extent that we really keep that promise and it's recognized, we build a reputation.
I see.
That reputation is the foundation of our marketing, which makes it easier to sell the next time. And it's a virtuous loop.
Yep.
You are the consummate marketer salesperson. That you are wired that way. It's where all your passion is.
It is.
And you think about it, you breathe it, it's innate to you. But you keep educating yourself.
Right. You
keep experimenting and learning. Seth is very naturally process-oriented. Seth can sell.
Yes, he can.
And you can do process.
Right.
But Seth's sweet spot starts at process, whereas yours starts with marketing and communication.
Right.
And so that is the yin and yang. It doesn't mean you can't do parts of each other's roles, but where your passions lie, your natural strengths, they're very complementary.
Right.
And so that's part of what's going on. It's totally natural. Most businesses have a strong tandem at different spots throughout the business. And it's for the exact same reason it's working at the top with you and Seth.
Right.
And so the traditional approach is the CEO is on the outside looking in. And that's why
and by the way, I love this. And in full disclosure, folks, what Mark is about to share with me is the wisdom he shared with me several months ago when I said, Mark, I need some help. Seth's going to be promoted to president. You said, I figured that was coming. Congratulations. I said, I don't want to mess this up. Please help me figure out a way to be best. And what you're about to say is what you told me, which is just awesome.
So CEO is more looking outside looking in.
And that's me. I'm the CEO.
That's right. And so by outside, I mean representing the voice of the customer.
Almost like in the windows of the building, looking peering in.
Through, yes,
right.
Looking through. President is more inside looking out, making sure, presiding over the operations, making sure we're eliminating waste, we're making it simple and repeatable, we're attending to our team.
Right.
And that yin and yang is really, really powerful because you've got it surrounded.
Right.
And so I think you guys have nailed that at this stage.
Well, I feel so.
You feel it, right?
I do. And I feel so fortunate at age 55. I honestly am having more fun right now in the business than I ever have. And you told me something else. I thought you were going to say it. You didn't, but I'm going to remind you. You told me nose in, hands off.
Yeah.
And that was like, once you said that when we met, I'm like, I got it. You're like, I needed something like that to help me understand how I can be a good CEO.
It's a little bit like either peering in the window or lifting up the tent, looking under it. But you don't want to be, as CEO, sticking your hands in.
You can't do it. You're undermining Seth.
You'll undermine the president.
Right.
And now you can talk with the president and you can share what you're seeing and what your thoughts are. And this would bring up another concept that sometimes in order to be a good leader, we have to be a good follower.
That's right. Amen.
And so inside the organization, sometimes the best CEO has to follow the president.
Yep. I'll tell you just two other things tactically that our listeners may enjoy hearing. So Seth and I, every other Friday for about 2.5 hours, we go and we visit jobs together. And we see the crews, we look at work, we talk to customers, we eat a Jimmy John's sandwich in my truck. I drive, he works on his laptop, he tells me where to go, he's looking up the trucks on the GPS. And rather than interrupting Seth whenever I have an idea or I want to ask why something is, I save all those and I put them on a stick note on the dashboard of my truck. And then I say, hey, Seth, last week I saw this. What do you think? And it's awesome conversations.
Beautiful.
So, and we had done this haphazardly and we had so much fun doing it like about 6-7 weeks ago. He texted me that night and he said something to the extent of, it's really fun working with you. And I really enjoyed today. And I really enjoyed our conversation. And so we have used that that is like the time that I can then talk to him. So 2.5 hours every other Friday, we're driving around, we're looking at jobs, we're seeing the two most important people in the company, our team and our clients.
Right.
And we're seeing, is what we're doing back here all day, is it actually working? Like, does our work look good? Are our people happy? Are people following safety protocols? I look forward to doing that with him, to go out and see how we're doing. It's like, it's the results of the test. Like, look, what we're doing is working. We're closing in on 12 million this year in sales, and it's working. So just an awesome insight, folks. I hope that helps. All right, let's talk a little bit more. Training,
so Marty.
Yeah.
As you wrap up those meetings, how do you feel?
I feel like I made a great decision in putting Seth as president. I am excited because we're growing and I wasn't able to do it.
You're energized.
Oh,
you feel calmer, more calm, more connected.
Yes.
There's something else that's going on. And that is you and Seth are looking at the windshield. So you are shoulder to shoulder. So nobody's telling each other what to do nose to nose. There's a time for that.
Wow.
But what you are doing is experiencing and observing your business shoulder to shoulder as peers. The business doesn't care if the idea came from the CEO or the president or the lowest level laborer. It cares, does the idea satisfy a customer and does it create value?
Satisfy a customer and create value.
Yeah, you've heard me say this. I'm a stingy old CEO. I want 3 outcomes from every activity. I want a delighted customer. I want to improve the firm. And I want the individual performing the duties to grow.
Yep. Beautiful.
And so all 3 levels, right? Customer, firm, individual, everybody thriving. And you can get that most of the time, almost all the time you can get 2, and you better get number 1.
Yeah, right.
You better get number 1,
right,
or there's not much else to talk about.
No.
And so that's what you guys are doing, and it is incredibly natural, and it's energizing. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. I mean, we give you a lot of credit. I know Seth enjoys meeting with you. You guys, for whatever reason, like to meet at Dunkin' Donuts. I understand that's your favorite coffee.
Well, I'm cheap.
Well, we'll buy you Dunkin' Donuts.
Okay.
Training.
Okay.
You have implemented universities, per se, where someone has grown to university or whatever you want to call it, in various organizations. Let's just talk briefly about the power of training. What can a small business do to get their own little university inside their company? Just give us your insight on training. I know you've had a lot of success with
Sure.
this.
So as we've said, when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yep.
And so a lot of a leader's work is inviting the student to be ready and preparing an environment where the teacher can naturally appear.
Yep.
So rules of thumb, at least in the way I think about it, introduction, kind of revealing a concept, one to many in terms of facilitator to group works just fine. But it's pretty short-lived. When the training gets deeper, the group of learners has to get smaller.
When the training gets deeper, the learners has to get smaller.
Yeah, the group
I
group of students has to get smaller until you're down to 1-to-1.
Yep. On
really deep learning. And a lot of times, as you know, like if you talk about our $25 million exercise,
right.
A lot of times it's good to flip the classroom and make the assignment, have you go wrestle with the assignment, and then come back and we work on it together.
I see.
Because you remember when I assigned $25 million, and the reason your blood pressure went up at the moment is I didn't give you any help.
No, right.
I said, see you next month.
Right.
And what I was doing was starting you on the work, and then what you brought back, we got back figuratively in the truck, shoulder to shoulder,
right.
And we talked about it and worked on it instead of some lecture or, me thinking I'm speaking from on high and I've got all the answers.
Yeah.
Neither of us had the answers. We were asking the right question and re-asking it until we could figure out parts of the answer, and you just keep working it from there. And doing it together is deeply energizing.
It is. And part of the learning, even when there's no wrong answer. Like even in figuring out something that didn't work, you learn.
Yes.
And you move forward.
Yes.
All right. Now for the fun stuff. I think the single most impactful thing, I know you're laughing because you know what I'm going to ask you.
I don't know what you're going to ask.
Oh, well, the single most impactful thing I've learned from you have told me repeatedly that one of the goals of an entrepreneur is to take low risk experiments. And I think about that all the time because we sit in our little offices and we do things and we're not sure if something would work. So we go and we meet with more people. Yeah. And then all the time of doing that, there's no action.
Yeah.
All right. And the problem's not getting solved or the opportunity's not being leveraged.
Yeah.
And you impressed upon me the fact that one of the best things an entrepreneur can do is help their organization take low risk experiments. Where did that come from? It's brilliant. And it's helped me so much. Where did that come from? And why is that so important?
Yeah. So its real roots are in Deming's thinking. So it didn't come from me.
Okay. Didn't know that.
And it's really, you hear it in software design and project delivery as agile development.
Okay.
Or agile delivery, which means small chunks of work. Those are the small, low risk experiments, and you do them over and over. And the feedback to the experiment always involves, guess who? The customer. And the customer will tell us if we're on track or not.
Yep.
And so the idea is you never get too far away from the value chain, which is from the customer.
I see.
The customer tells us, no, you want to go over this way a little bit. And then we do another experiment. And so
we're not going to pay you to do that, but we'll pay you to do that.
And
Right.
so it keeps a dialogue and a conversation with the customer, and it's all about the customer's perception of value. And we're using experiments to sort that out. Another way of thinking of it, Marty, is a business owner's number one job is to be in business tomorrow morning. And so if I'm swinging for the fence, if I'm going all in, there's a much higher probability that I'm going to strike out.
Yes.
Or tap
And if
out.
I do a small one.
Small one, I've kept plenty of reserve.
Right.
And I'm in business tomorrow morning. I have enough cash. I have a going concern. I haven't blown it up. And it feels exciting to take great big risks and win the lottery. It just doesn't happen that way very often. And you know this, right?
Well, with our new endeavor, Grunder Green, the lawn care, that's what we did. We tried for 18 months. We just put a spreader on one of our green trucks. It was a bad setup and everything, but we started testing it. How's the product work? How does the route work? All that. And that enabled us to get a whole ton of feedback before we went and bought a $140,000 truck to put on the road to do the service. We're now up to 2 trucks. We have a third one coming. So we're learning a lot there, but it was rooted in some very low cost experiments to see, because you just don't know how it's going to play out on some of that stuff till you get in there and do that.
Amen. And so if you look at Deming's work, it actually is just a recasting of the scientific method to business.
Okay. One other funny thing, you always say to me, I'm from the show me state, so you got to show me. What do you mean by that?
So, first of all, I'm not from Missouri.
I know.
But I'm really asking you to teach.
Okay.
And so I'm saying, show me. The reason I'm saying show me is more than 2/3 of us, our preferred learning style is visual. We are visual learners first. And so if you can show me, I'm asking you to demonstrate how you're going to teach or manage me. And I'm a safe person to teach, right? I don't know anything technically about your business. So if you can explain it to me or whatever it is,
I see.
I'm really testing, does this make sense? And, it's no more complex than that. If you can teach, then you can manage. And if you're showing it, then you're going to connect with the majority of your team.
And, folks, 95% of the people that are listening to us are owners and leaders of landscaping companies. Probably over half of them have some Spanish-speaking employees.
Exactly.
Showing them breaks through the language barrier when you're demonstrating landscaping techniques and other things.
It's huge.
And the show me part of it, I think, is critically important. I know, one of the reasons, folks, we put together the Grow Show was so that you could understand what our annual event Grow is, which is February 6th, 7th, and 8th, Des Moines, Iowa. We're going to have a great event there. And Mark, our event is, we don't keep people seated for longer than 45 minutes.
Beautiful.
Because who in the world would want to sit in a conference center for 9 or 10 hours and be just lectured to?
Right.
I have a college diploma, barely. You have 2 of them. And I know both of us don't want to sit there like that all day. We want to be interactive. We want to get up, move around. The show me stuff, that's important. And these are basic things, okay? None of the stuff I think that you've shared here today, strategic planning, the show me, the low risk experiments, all of those things, none of those are things that any business, no matter what size, could get their arms around and implement.
I agree.
Well, we got just a couple more things. What would you like? Is there anything I haven't asked you that you think would be important to share about an experience? And you're welcome even to touch on mistakes we made. I've told you this before. Sometimes people pay me a compliment and they say, I just can't believe how easy you talk about your failures. Like, you're so humble. Well, I don't know that I'm very humble. My wife, Lisa, would not tell you that I'm humble. Here's what I know, Mark. I know I'm good. I know I am. I have a lot of confidence in the things that we've accomplished, but I also know to get better, I got to learn from those failures. And I have learned as a teacher, students learn a lot more from you talking to them about what you messed up than just going over all the things you've succeeded at.
Well, first of all, it diffuses all the imposter syndrome that the student has.
Great point.
And it humanizes the whole experience. But those failures are simply experiments that didn't work.
Right.
And so the key is to not live in or anchor in the failure. The key is to move on to the next low risk experiment with the learning we're taking from the prior experiment. And so that's all you're doing. And you do it naturally and it works well. And you're not ashamed of those failures because they were steps from here to where you are now. And you know you're going to make more from here to where you're going. The idea, again, is to not go all in and have catastrophic failures. And you never have. There's times we've probably been too close.
Yeah, right.
But the reality of it is you break it down and you just keep moving forward.
I have a friend. His name is Nito Cubain. He's president of High Point University in High Point, North Carolina. He's a very, very smart, wonderful man. And I heard him one time teaching in a session I was in. He was talking about scenario planning. And he said, scenario planning is this. You look at your best case scenario, okay? And you really don't spend a whole lot of time there analyzing that because who can't handle the best case scenario? Right. You spend time thinking about what might happen, okay, what's most likely to happen, that scenario. But the place you spend the most time in is what is the worst case scenario? And what he said was if you feel that you can overcome that worst case scenario and that what's most likely to happen is good, go for it. And that has helped me in making decisions.
I think it's a great framework. The way, very similarly, I've always thought of it is look at that worst case scenario. And initially, you're going to have a lot of emotion around that.
A lot.
And over a couple
especially when we're talking money. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
Right. It's frightening.
And ego.
Right.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to be a failure.
Right.
So as you keep coming back to that worst case scenario, you can make peace with it. And you begin to answer the question, what needs to be true for this worst case scenario not to take me out?
Yep.
And now you can mitigate the risk of the worst case scenario. Once you've done that and you have a little bit of emotional peace with the downside, now you can play offense the rest of the way. The whole game is how do I get off that worst case scenario closer to the best?
Right.
And that's the game. I'm just playing offense, but I know I'm going to live. I have my mitigating strategies if it goes worst case.
Yeah.
We'll still be in business. We'll keep chugging away.
Right.
And so that's the game for me. It has helped a lot because I don't think clearly if I'm all emotional.
Right.
And so you got to manage yourself and then free yourself to play offense.
Mark, it's been a pleasure having you here. I am so grateful for what you've done for our business. It's awesome to have you a phone call away. I'm really glad, folks, to share with you Mark Thompson, one of our mentors and coaches and consultants here at Grunder Landscaping. We hope you enjoyed this week on The Grow Show. Anything final you want to say before we go?
Thanks for having me, Marty.
All right.
Congratulations on everything you guys are doing.
Well, thank you for showing us some ways to do it, man. All right, folks, have a great week. We'll talk to you next week on The Grow Show.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Grow Show. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And head to growgroupinc.com for more information and resources to grow your landscaping business. A special thanks to the folks at Stihl, whose support makes this podcast possible and whose reliable handheld power equipment makes our jobs easier daily. We'll talk to you next week.